This is Bydgoszcz in northern Poland. In 1939, following the occupation of the city by the Nazis, thousands of Polish people were murdered in retaliation for alleged crimes against the German minority that happened there on Sunday, the 3rd of September 1939, which became known as the Bromberg Bloody Sunday, which in turn was part of what the Nazi propaganda called the September crimes. As Putin does today, Nazi German propaganda claimed that the German ethnic minority was badly treated in the countries that it had singled out for attack. In the aftermath of World War I, with the redrawing of borders, millions of German speakers who had previously been citizens of the German Empire or Austro Hungary now found themselves inside countries where they were an ethnic minority. The nationalist mindset, then as today, demanded that these people somehow be returned to where they belong, but not by moving to the mother country, but by that mother country moving to them. The first target was Czechoslovakia, where millions of German speakers resided. These people had never been part of Germany and certainly enjoyed more rights and a better standard of living by being part of Czechoslovakia than they would have had they been in Nazi Germany. Nonetheless, using saboteurs who crossed from Nazi Germany and nationalist traitors within that country, the Nazis were able to create a crisis which was then used as a pretext, which in turn led to the annihilation of Czechoslovakia.
Während die Bevölkerung Danzigs ruhig und vertrauensvoll die Heimkehr ins Reich erwartet, sind die Volksdeutschen innerhalb der polnischen Grenzen wildestem Terror ausgesetzt. Viele Tausende flüchteten vor den Gewalttätigkeiten der Polen in den Schutz des Reiches und fanden vorläufig in Sammellagern Aufnahme.
This newsreel film purports to show members of the German minority in Poland who have escaped to Germany and are telling of what happened to them at the hands of the Poles. From the spring of 1939, in preparation for the Nazi invasion of Poland, reports had appeared in the media in Germany about attacks on the German minority in Poland, whereas some were orchestrated by the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, or German military intelligence, the Abwehr. Others were organized by Polish thugs. These reports grew in number in the run-up to the invasion. These Germans were residents of the Polish Corridor, a strip of land connecting the rest of Poland to the Baltic Sea, where the population was mixed and which was handed to Poland after World War I, having been held by Germany and previous Prussia for well over a century. As today in Ukraine, where the Putin regime uses Russians to infiltrate the country that was to be occupied, and, as they had already done to Czechoslovakia, Nazi German agents infiltrated Poland with the aim of creating tension. As in Czechoslovakia, the German minority had the same rights as Poles, but what differed was a stronger sense of entitlement, something frequently occurring when one group sees a second group as becoming its equal. This sense of entitlement was to demonstrate itself in a horrendous wave of violence after September 1939. The German minority in Poland had its own organizations, public schools where German was the language of instruction, newspapers and representation in parliament. Many Germans who were part of a minority did not welcome Nazi intervention in their lives. However, with the threat of war, people were forced to decide what side they would be on. In times of war, this could split families. In view of the threat and the clouds of invasion given the Nazi attacks on Austria, Czechoslovakia and Lithuania, the Polish authorities began to arrest prominent representatives of the German and Ukrainian minorities or persons otherwise designated as potentially being disloyal, such as communists. It needs to be remembered that Hitler and Stalin were then allies and that the communists inside Poland were likely to take the side of Hitler. With the attack on Poland on the 1st of September 1939, there was little chance to decide who needed to be detained and who did not, and the campaign of arrest was expanded. This was a decision that affected 15,000 Germans, 10,000 of whom lived in Greater Poland, which had been the Prussian province of Posen until 1919. Most of the remainder lived in Pomerania. These ethnic Germans were moved to central Poland. Given that these deportations were organized very hastily and at the last moment, and in the conditions of war, a large amount of people died. According to Catherine Epstein in her book Model Nazi, Arthur Greiser and the Occupation of Western Poland, between 1,178 and 2,200 of those who were detained died. There are a number of different reasons for their deaths. Some were killed as a result of air attacks by the Luftwaffe, others through exhaustion, others may have been shot by their guards. On the 3rd to the 4th of September 1939, retreating units of the Polish army moved through Bydgoszcz, which was then under threat from both the west and the east. The city was one of the most important industrial centres of Poland and now also served as a conduit for Polish forces in the Polish corridor trying to escape to the east. As a result of a road accident on a road leading out of the city and consequent traffic jam, a panic broke out. What exactly happened is not clear. Maybe a German infiltration unit attacked a Polish convoy out. Maybe there were no Germans, but in any case, Polish troops believed that they were being attacked. Investigations were carried out, but it was never conclusively determined who fired on whom first. Even today in Ukraine, for example, there have been cases where, in the confusion, Russians have attacked Russians. In the first Gulf War, more British troops were killed by American forces than Iraqi. So confusion happens even today. However, what did happen as a result was that the Polish troops and police redoubled their efforts to find potential German terrorists and search the homes of the German minority for weapons. In the circumstances, these searches are unlikely to have been carried out with much consideration for the thoughts of the people whose homes were being searched. In other places, such as the border town of Leszno, or Gniezno, which was some distance from the pre-war frontier, but where there was a significant German minority, Nazi agents who had been planted behind the lines attacked Polish soldiers and carried out raids on army facilities and police stations which may have been planned in Germany. This resulted in many arrests. The fate of the arrested depended very much on the attitude of those doing the arresting. Some people were released, but many were deported without questioning, and some were shot. Any saboteur caught in possession of weapons was shot on the spot without trial by the Polish military. In these circumstances, innocent bystanders could also find themselves in trouble when real or suspected saboteurs were found. However, it needs to be made absolutely clear that these deaths were the responsibility of those who deliberately increased tensions and then invaded Poland. Without the Nazi ideology and invasion, this would not have happened.
Hier werden alle die Mordgesellen aus ihren Schlupfwinkeln geholt, die sich an den viehischen Bluttaten gegen wehrlose deutsche Bürger in der berüchtigten Blutnacht von Bromberg beteiligt hatten. Sie werden sofort ihrer standrechtlichen Bestrafung entgegengeführt.
Unerbittlich aber schlägt die deutsche Wehrmacht zu, wo sie auf Marodeure und Freischärler stößt, die deutsches Gut und Blut heimtückisch und sinnlos vernichteten. Auf dem schnellen Vormarsch unserer Truppen gelang es, die Haupttäter solcher Mordtaten zu entlarven. Im Gefangenenlager von Bromberg wurden befreite Volksdeutsche ihren Peinigern gegenübergestellt. Hier erkennt einer von ihnen den Mörder seines Bruders.
The first report on the Bydgoszcz incidents appeared in the German press on the 7th of September 1939. In the weeks that followed, the events were progressively exaggerated. Whereas the true number of those killed is not known, it is usually accepted that around 260 people were killed in Bydgoszcz as a result of Bloody Sunday. In total, as many as 4,000 to 5,000 people of the German minority were killed in Polish custody. Goebbels took this number and claimed it was the amount of people killed in Bydgoszcz alone, and then put a 0 on the end of the number in order to claim that 50,000 Germans were killed in Bydgoszcz on this day. This propaganda claim was widely repeated and continues to be repeated by neo-Nazis today, although it is patently absurd given the population of Bydgoszcz. In 1942, the wife of Auschwitz commandant Rudolf Hess stated that the Poles needed to pay for the crime of killing 50,000 Germans in Bydgoszcz. Once the Nazis and their Soviet allies had occupied all of Poland, special courts in Poznan, Bydgoszcz, Gdansk, Chojnice, Grudziądz, Toruń, Łódź and Inowrocław investigated what they termed the September crimes. A number of cases appeared before them and a number of death sentences were given. 225 death sentences in Bydgoszcz alone. However, tens of thousands of Poles were murdered without trial, whilst hundreds of thousands were deported from the Polish corridor and Greater Poland as this land was occupied and annexed by Nazi Germany for the next 5.5 years. The sad thing here is that the only lesson which seems to have been learned from history is how to repeat it. The methodology successfully used by Hitler to stir up tensions in order to attack Czechoslovakia, Lithuania and Poland is now being used by the Putin regime in Moscow and parroted by today's neo-Nazis. I hope you found that interesting. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours Central European time. I'm based in Poland and I do a lot of videos on history from Poland and from Germany. My specialist area is the Second World War and in particular the Holocaust. So if you're interested, then you might want to subscribe. Thanks for listening.